A street kid asks a billionaire, "Can I have your leftovers?" And what happens next is amazing. The rain hammered down, a wild symphony of droplets drenching the bustling city. Dark clouds hung overhead, casting a gloomy shadow over the shiny skyscrapers that scraped the sky. Their glass walls reflected the stormy chaos below, a stark contrast to the warmth inside. In the heart of this urban jungle, a 10-year-old street kid named Jamie scampered between puddles, his thin frame barely making a splash in the deluge. His stomach rumbled, a furious growl demanding attention amid the sprawling city noise. He had one goal: find something to eat, a scrap of bread, a piece of fruit, anything. As he wandered towards a fancy restaurant, a beacon of light surrounded by glistening cars, another sound caught his ear. The excited chatter of the well-to-do, laughter mingling with clinking silverware. The scent of rich food wafted through the air, teasing his senses. His heart raced. He knew he shouldn't be here. This wasn't his world, but hunger has a way of stealing courage. As he peeked through the window with wide, hungry eyes, he caught sight of the man seated at the head of the table. Richard. Everyone knew his name, the ruthless billionaire known for sharp deals and sharper suits. But what they didn't know? Richard was also a myth around here, whispered about in dark alleys and shadowy corners. They said he had a golden heart hidden beneath layers of armor. With a trembling breath and resolve hardening in his chest, Jamie dashed to the entrance just as a fancy-dressed waiter swept by with a tray of leftovers. Jamie's voice quaked with desperation. "Excuse me, sir." The waiter raised an eyebrow, surprised at the raggedy boy drenched from the storm. Jamie gulped, glancing through the glass at Richard, who seemed oblivious to the world outside. "Can I have your leftovers?" Richard's sharp gaze shot toward the commotion, and for a flicker of a moment, the whole room froze. Eyes turned, and whispers surged. The boldness of a street kid asking a billionaire was like tossing a match into a pile of dry leaves. The tension crackled. "What's he doing here?" someone murmured. "Disgusting," another scoffed. But Jamie held Richard's gaze, and something shifted in the billionaire's dark, stony eyes. Recognition, perhaps? A flicker of guilt? Time warped, a heavy second weighed with unspoken words. The onlookers looked from rich to poor, and Jamie felt every stare, every pressing judgment. The loud silence felt suffocating, yet Jamie's determination glanced over the rough edges of his situation. Behind his sunny smile was a storm of pain. His mother, taken too soon, her laughter drowned in sorrow. Richard's business deals. They had crushed his world, and yet here he stood, searching for a sliver of hope in a sea of despair. But why was he drawn to a man like Richard? And did that man hold the power to change destinies? Or was he just another player in a twisted game? The waiter sighed, looking unsure, and Jamie held his breath. This moment hung heavy, poised on the edge of something monumental. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, smash that like button because it really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The waiter paused, his tray hovering midair. The silence deepened, people whispering sharply, casting glances that sliced through the tension. Jamie's heart pounded, each beat pushing words into his throat, desperate for a response. Richard, the billionaire, remained still, as if wrestling with some unseen storm inside him. Then, just as the waiter opened his mouth to speak, the restaurant's glass doors burst open. A loud crash echoed through the air, snapping everyone back to the moment, a breath held tight in collective shock. A frantic man, wild-eyed and drenched, stormed in, his voice slicing through the murmurs. I know him. I know who that kid is. Jamie's stomach dropped. The man pushed past the bewildered patrons, his eyes locked on Jamie. Panic seized him, thoughts racing. Was this someone from his past? His heart raced faster, fear bleeding into confusion. Stay away from him, the man raged, pointing a finger, a dangerous fury radiating off him. Richard's expression shifted, dark eyes narrowing. What do you mean? He shot back, but confusion wrapped around his voice. That kid, the man panted, barely able to spit out the words. He's not just a street kid, he's the son of... The words hung in the air, heavy, potent. Gasps erupted. Shockwaves rippled through the crowd. Jamie's heart plummeted. Son of who? Questions crashed in like waves. But before he could grasp anything concrete, the man continued, his voice rising, strangled with emotion. You don't know what he's been through. His mother, she worked for you. She was trying to warn you. They wanted to silence her. The moment froze, breaths caught mid-exhale, and Jamie's face felt cold and hot at the same time. Richard's face splotched with white, as recognition broke like a sudden dawn. It was there, hidden beneath layers of power and arrogance. Guilt? What happened to her? Richard demanded, voice low, almost a whisper. The man's expression morphed. Pain, anger, something deeper that sparked a fire behind his eyes. She was trying to save him from your deals. She told me everything. You thought you could control everything, didn't you? You didn't realize the real consequence of your power. The waiter stood frozen, mouth agape, the tray shaking in his hands. A distant rumble of thunder echoed in the background, matching the tension that crackled in the air. Everyone leaned closer, apprehensive to miss the revelation, but Jamie felt small, invisible. This was more than leftover food. This was a storm, pulling back layers of lies. Richard's gaze turned back to Jamie, eyes now stormy, haunted by a mix of recognition and regret. You're her son. It wasn't a question. It was a realization carved from regret and shattered dreams. Jamie stood still, a lump in his throat. I just wanted food. The silence surged once more, but now it held a different kind of weight. The very fabric of Jamie's world shifted beneath him. Who he was, who Richard was. Everything twisted into something raw and unexpected. The man glared at Richard, voice laced with anger. You owe him more than your leftovers. You owe him the truth. In that charged moment, the doors swung open again, a freighter of complications seeking entry. Someone else stepped inside, a sharp-dressed woman, eyes scanning the room like a hawk. She moved with a purpose, an energy that shifted the atmosphere. What have you done? She cried, voice piercing with a mix of fear and fury. This wasn't supposed to happen. The crowd erupted into whispers, gasps, shrieks of horror. The restaurant, once a haven of fine dining, turned into a battlefield of secrets and dreams poised to collapse. Jamie clutched his chest, realization dawning. Who are you? But the question fell heavy in the air, unanswered, as the truth began to unravel in ways he never imagined. The sharp-dressed woman's eyes narrowed, and she strode forward, determination radiating from her. What have you done? She cried again, voice laced with fury, her gaze darting from Richard to the man who had burst in and finally landing on Jamie. Tension crackled. Jamie felt the weight of her stare like 1,000 arrows piercing his chest. Who are you? He echoed, his voice barely a whisper, fear creeping in his throat. The man had claimed to know his mother. But this woman, was she friend or foe? Enough! Richard suddenly shouted, and it cut through the chaos like a knife. His voice held a command that sent a shiver through the crowd. You don't get to barge in here and disrupt everything. Disrupt? She spat, eyes twinkling with fury. You have no idea what's been set in motion. You think this is just about leftovers and a kid in the rain? You're mistaken, Richard. This is about your past catching up with you. Before she could finish, The ground shook, rumbling beneath their feet. A loud crash sounded from the back of the restaurant, sending glasses rattling and patrons screeching in shock. Was it an earthquake? But no, it was something far more terrifying. Suddenly the doors burst open again. A group of men in black suits, serious-faced, menacing, stormed in, all sharp eyes and cold commands. They pushed aside stunned customers like they were mere obstacles in a race. "Step aside, we need the boy," one shouted, voice hard as steel. "What's happening?" Panic erupted like a firestorm. Whispers spiraled around the room, confusion thickening the air. The woman stepped back, her expression shifting from anger to horror. "No, not him," she shouted, her voice breaking. "Let him go, he's innocent." Jamie's heart raced, vision narrowing in on the approaching men. He felt exposed, raw. "What do you want with me?" he cried out, but his voice trembled. Fear gripped him. Richard leaped forward, shielding Jamie like a lion protecting its cub. "You can't take him. He's done nothing wrong." His face paled, eyes flicking between the man who had first barged in and the new threats. But it was the wild-eyed man who spoke next, his features twisted in anguish. "He's not just a boy, Richard. He's the key. They're coming for him. Because of you." The room fell utterly silent. Jamie's pulse hammered in his ears. "The key? What did that even mean?" "Key to what?" Richard snapped. A quiver ran through him, hidden behind bravado. Yet before anyone could answer, the lead man in the suits took a bold step forward. "We need him for the deal, before they erase everything. You can't protect him forever, Richard. Rethink your choices." A chill swept through Jamie as the truth hit hard. There were layers to this. He wasn't just a hungry street kid. This was bigger than him. The tension escalated. The restaurant felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Jamie's world, already cracked, began to splinter further. Richard looked haunted, as if shadows from his past were finally surfacing, clawing through the walls he'd built. "Don't take him," Richard shouted again, despair flooding his voice. "I'll do anything." And then it happened. In an instant, the doors slammed shut, trapping them all inside. Lights flickered, the air thickened. Jamie could feel the dread of impending chaos racing towards them. What was about to unearth itself in that place? What hidden truths would spill out next? As Jamie looked up at Richard, his heart pounding furiously, a singular thought emerged amid the storm. Everything he thought he knew was shifting. This was just the beginning. What was the connection between his mother, Richard, and these mysterious men? The ground shook under their feet, sending tremors racing through Jamie's body. He blinked, heart thumping wildly, the world closing in, as the men in black suits moved closer. Richard's fierce stance faltered, and Jamie could see the fear etched on his face. The room felt electric with urgency. "What do you mean, they're coming for him?" Richard demanded, eyes darting between the wild-eyed man and Jamie. The chaos around them amplified, each second stretching like an eternity. The lead man in the suits, cold and intimidating, stepped forward. "You're too late, Richard. The deal was never just about you or your wealth. It's always been about him." Jamie's breath hitched, confusion and dread surging within him. He had come here hungry, searching for a scrap of food, and now it felt like he was at the center of a storm. "What do you want?" "With me?" His voice trembled, barely above a whisper, but it echoed with urgency. "Listen, boy," the wild-eyed man said, taking a step closer. "Your mother knew things, dangerous things. You're the key to everything." The tension in the room escalated, transforming from uncertainty to dread. "Key to what?" Jamie shouted, hands trembling at his sides. Richard, protective, but visibly shaken, remained at his side. He looked torn, as if every decision he had ever made was undressing before him. Before anyone could answer, the sharp-dressed woman stepped forward, her expression shifting from fury to despair. "This isn't just about power, Richard. This is about her, about Jamie." Richard's jaw tightened, fists clenching. "You don't know what you're talking about. My business is my own." "You're wrong," she cried, turning to Jamie, eyes fierce yet soft. "You can't trust him. No one can. He took everything from your mother." The truth hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Jamie's gaze darted between Richard and the woman, heart racing. What did he take? What happened to her? Panic squeezed his chest, memories flickering like shadows. Then, in a heartbeat, chaos erupted. The doors slammed open for the third time, but this time it wasn't just men in suits. A flash of bright lights. The blare of sirens drowned out gasps and screams. Jamie turned to see armed police barging in, weapons drawn, shouting orders, confusion hitting the crowd hard. Everyone on the ground. This is a raid. The restaurant devolved into chaos, patrons ducking and scrambling for cover. Richard's protective stance faltered as fear took hold, but he kept Jamie close. Stay with me. Jamie didn't know what to think. The tension morphed again. This was bigger than he could grasp. I just want to eat, he cried, frustration spilling over as he looked around at the bedlam. Not just food, Jamie, Richard said, voice strained. You're entangled in something far worse. They tried to silence your mother. Enough, shouted the lead officer. You're all under investigation. Just when Jamie thought the world couldn't twist any further, the ground split wide open beneath him. An echo reverberated through the restaurant. A deep, resonant voice boomed from somewhere above. You think you can contain the truth forever? Jamie glanced up, eyes widening. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman cloaked in mystery, her presence flooding the room with a dark energy that felt familiar. You're too late, Richard. The truth demands to be set free. Richard swayed back, recognition flickering in his eyes. The crowd fell silent, confusion and dread painted across every face. Jamie felt like he had just stepped into a movie he didn't understand, and yet every twist felt eerily intimate. The woman lifted her chin, icy confidence radiating from her. Everything you know is about to change, and so are you, Jamie. You might just be the one to end this. Questions piled up, urgency tangling with the mystery. Jamie stood frozen, caught in this web of fear and secrets. Who was she? What truth was she talking about? And what did he have to do with it? As the lights flickered ominously, Jamie felt the heat of uncertainty wash over him. The restaurant felt alive with tension, but now it was charged with an unexpected promise. A promise of danger and revelation. He tried to pull himself together, but everything was spiraling too fast. The pieces of his life felt disjointed, and now it seemed they were all connected to something far darker than the hunger that had driven him here in the first place. What kind of key could he possibly be, and was he ready to unlock the truth? The woman's eyes burned into Jamie, powerful and piercing. You might just be the one to end this, she'd said, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something massive was colliding. Richard stood tall beside him, fierce but trembling inside. The tension hit like a thunderclap, a furious storm brewing with every heartbeat. Enough, shouted the lead officer, his voice slicing through the growing chaos. This isn't a game. Down on the ground. Jamie's heart raced. He felt like a pawn in a game that was spiraling out of control. He looked to Richard, whose eyes blazed with desperation. Stay close, Richard whispered, as if his very presence was Jamie's lifeline. Then, without warning, the lights flickered violently, plunging the restaurant into shadow. And in that darkness, everything changed. A deafening explosion shattered the moment. Glass shattered, shrieks erupted, and the very ground seemed to ripple beneath them. Down, someone yelled, but panic engulfed the restaurant. Jamie fell to his knees, hands covering his head. The world exploded around him, the chaos untying the fabric of his mind. When the dust settled, Jamie blinked through the haze, confusion settling like a dense fog. Sirens roared outside. The armed men in suits were scattered, some on the ground, others scrambling for cover. Richard's fierce expression turned to horror, suddenly realizing that everything had just escalated far beyond leftovers and secrets. Jamie, we need to go. Richard pulled him to his feet, but as they rushed toward the nearest exit, Jamie felt a pull, an unsettling dread swelling in his chest. He turned back, past the chaos, toward the wild-eyed man and the sharp-dressed woman, who hovered like shadows in the carnage. faces twisted in fear and recognition. Just then, Jamie heard a voice, a warm, familiar voice cutting through the madness like a beacon. Jamie. It was his mother, the voice he thought he'd lost. "Mom?" The word broke from his lips, reverberating across the wreckage. His heart pounded as he searched frantically, pleading for a miracle to pull her from the shadows. But the wild-eyed man shouted, "No, don't look for her." Fear etched deep lines on his face. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." Jamie faltered, for a moment instinctively scared. Why was this all happening? Then he saw her, standing at the edge of the plaza, radiating calm amidst chaos. But something was strange. She looked different, older, as if she had stepped through time itself. "No," Richard shouted again, urgency crackling in his voice. "You can't trust her." The rawness of Jamie's emotions twisted in a painful knot. "But she's my mother." The chaos froze around them. The men in suits were momentarily forgotten, confusion slicing through the restaurant like lightning. The woman, resembling Jamie's mother, turned slowly, her eyes swirling with a darkness that felt like a punch to the gut. "No, Jamie," her voice echoed, soft and haunting. "You have to believe me. I did what I had to do." Reality cracked like thin ice. Shortly before everything exploded, Jamie felt everything he believed unraveling. "Did what? What do you mean?" She took a step closer, confusion and fear dancing in her eyes like wildfire. "I wasn't just trying to protect you. I was trying to save the world." Gasps. She was not just Jamie's mother. She was integral to something deeper, a web of conspiracy, danger, and secrets that stalked them all. Jamie's thoughts twisted, disbelief clawing at his very core. What? How? Distrust and hope collided within him, a searing confusion that stabbed through his heart. "Richard knows," she replied, voice trembling. "He made his choices, but those choices led us all here." Richard stepped back, eyes wide, horror etched across his features. "No, this isn't what—" The ground quaked beneath them again, shaking the truth loose from the edges of their minds. Sirens wailed louder, the building painted in shadow and flashing lights. Jamie's whole world tilted as he gripped his mother's arm, refusing to let go. "What's happening?" His voice rose, desperate for answers. The weight of the world hung on her next words. "Everything is interconnected, Jamie. And if you don't understand your role in this, it could destroy us all." Each revelation hung heavy in the air, shaping the storm of uncertainty swirling around them. Jamie's heart thundered, the chaos now a fevered dream of fear and fury. He needed clarity, but all he felt was the tightening noose of confusion. "Are you telling me I'm part of something bigger than I thought?" He stared deep into her eyes, searching for the mother he longed for, but was met with something darker, something raw. "Yes, but if you don't trust me, if you turn away." Her voice quivered, trembling with the weight of what lay ahead. And just as Jamie was about to respond, one of the men in black surged forward, eyes blazing with furious intensity, determination etched deep on his face. "You all need to run. Now. They'll be here any minute. You need to understand the truth." As the weight of his words settled, Jamie felt the ground beneath him pulse. Every revelation twisted, collided, and trembled into a storm of uncertainty. Who could he trust? The truth felt both terrifying and thrilling, aching to burst free, yet shrouded in shadow. He looked at Richard, whose face seemed like 1,000 pages of regret exposed. "Richard, what did you do?" And suddenly it felt more urgent than ever, to unravel the truth before the storm devoured them whole. The restaurant buzzed with chaos, sirens and warnings weaving around them, but in that moment, Jamie grasped one thing. The real fight was just beginning, and he might just be the key to unraveling it all. But what were those secrets? Where would they lead him? The questions hung heavy as the storm loomed closer, still waiting for something darker to unfold. Jamie's heart pounded hard against his ribcage. The chaos swirled around him like a storm, sirens screaming in the distance. Richard stood protectively at his side, eyes darting from the armed men to his mother's impassioned face, confusion twisting his features. "Jamie, listen," she urged, desperation thickening her voice. "You need to trust me. This fight is about more than just us." "Trust you? You vanished. You left me." The hurt spilled out, raw and unfiltered. "You left me alone." "I had to protect you," she insisted, eyes glistening like the rain-soaked world outside. "Don't you see? They're coming for you because you are special. You have to realize." And then, just like that, the air shifted again, heavy with something darker. A thunderous crash echoed from outside, rattling the windows. A black SUV skidded to a halt right in front of the restaurant, tires screeching against the wet pavement. Jamie felt a chill seep into his bones. He turned to Richard, who now wore a look of sheer terror. "You have to get out of here," Richard shouted. "They weren't just looking for the boy, they want you too." Suddenly the doors burst open, a wave of armed men pouring in, guns drawn, eyes scanning hungrily. Jamie's breath caught in his throat. This was beyond a simple raid. It was an ambush. "Get down," one of the officers barked. But before anyone could move, an explosion shook the restaurant again. This time, it didn't just rumble. It shattered every illusion of safety. The ground trembled as the air turned to chaos. Bodies fell, screams erupted, and Jamie's world swirled into complete disarray. Richard grabbed him, pulling him tight, shielding him from debris as the walls shuddered. But the closer Jamie clung to Richard, the farther away he felt. It was as if time had become a fuzzy echo, dragging him down a torrent where nothing made sense. Then, through the noise and terror, Jamie caught a glimpse of his mother. She stood defiant, unwavering against the chaos, eyes blazing with urgency. "You have to listen, Jamie. You're the one, you're the—" But before she could finish, the sharp-dressed woman rushed forward, her face pale and determined. "No," she shouted, breaking through the noise. "It's not just him, it's you too." The grip on Jamie's heart tightened. "What do you mean?" he yelled, voice cracking. "Your mother's not who you think she is." The woman stepped closer, breathless, panic swirling in her words. "The truth is, you both are part of something much bigger. Something they don't want you to know." "Enough," Richard shouted in a voice that boomed, an echo implanted with power, but fear danced on his face. "We need to move." Suddenly, the roof above creaked ominously. A ceiling panel dropped, crashing to the ground with a deafening thud, sending everyone scrambling. But in that chaos, a strange sound rose above it all. A soft humming, almost melodic. "What is that?" Jamie whispered, dread pooling in his gut. And then, in a flash that split everything, a piercing light filled the room. It descended like a beam from above, engulfing them all in an unearthly glow. Everything felt surreal, blurred around the edges. Bodies pressed against him, terror threatening to drown him. In the blink of an eye, the light expanded, creating a barrier around Jamie and the desperate. "Fight for survival." Richard shouted something Jamie couldn't hear over the din, but Jamie felt something stir inside him. A warmth that blossomed, that intertwined with the chaos, binding itself to the melody that now filled his ears. "Jamie," his mother's voice rang clear, cutting through the tumult. "Find your power. It's inside you. Unlock it." And in that instant, everything changed. Jamie's heart swelled as realization pierced through the noise. He was not just a boy run by fear. He was part of this world, woven into a pattern that pulsed with energetic life. Suddenly, he felt stronger, grounded amid the chaos. As the light flickered, a blinding pulse exploded from him, throwing everyone back. Screams filled the air as the men in suits stumbled. And in that moment, Jamie stood at the heart of it, illuminated and powerful. But then the woman, fear twisting her features, said something that pierced the newfound clarity. Jamie, you are the last of your kind. You must choose. Protect them or save yourself. The implications hung heavy in the charged air. Jamie's heart raced. Protect them? Save himself? What kind of choice was that? Everything he thought he knew shattered, as the reality of his power settled in. A new question loomed, even larger. What would he choose? The moment lingered, electric and raw, as he faced the unyielding darkness that threatened to claim everything. The storm was just beginning. Jamie stood in the eye of the hurricane, the chaos swirling around him. Panic knotted tight in his stomach. He felt that strange warmth pulsing within him, resonating in sync with the chaos. But his mind was still racing. What was he supposed to choose? He was the key, the boy king trapped in a storm of secrets and shadows? His heart raced alongside the chaos. Richard was shouting, urging everyone to run, but Jamie's feet felt glued to the floor. The wild-eyed man beside his mother watched Jamie with a mix of fear and urgency. "Follow your instincts. Do it now," the man yelled, voice blending into the disarray. It wasn't just the police anymore. The restaurant had turned into a battleground. Sirens wailed outside like a banshee, a chorus of destruction. Suddenly, the sharp-dressed woman stepped forward, her face etched with worry. "Jamie, if you embrace your power, you can bring them down." But just as his resolve began to shift, everything froze for the briefest second. A shocking noise cut through the din. A loud crack, like thunder but closer. The ceiling above started to crumble, dust clouding the air like a fog of despair. "Get out!" Richard pushed Jamie forward, but as he moved, a blinding light enveloped them again. Jamie's heart raced. It wasn't the light that was blinding him, but a sudden realization. Something was off, wrong. In the blink of an eye, the chaos shattered the moment again. Jamie felt another surge of energy pulse through him, but this time it didn't just feel warm. It felt dark and powerful. The last gasp of light inside flickered, revealing a shocking clarity. "Mom!" Jamie shouted, his voice echoing against the walls, heart pounding like a drum. "What did you mean by not who you think?" But before he could hear an answer, the temperature dropped. It felt like a cold wave crashing over him, curdling the air. The crowd gasped collectively. Time seemed to hang. Everyone's eyes darted to the mouth of the restaurant. From the shadows emerged a figure that made Jamie's blood run cold. It was another woman, older, fierce, her hair wild as if perpetually caught in a storm. She stepped through the debris, her gaze fixing on Jamie with a ferocity that sent chills down his spine. "Hello again, Jamie," she said, voice smooth yet tainted with malice. "Who are you?" Jamie breathed, the words barely escaping as he struggled to grasp the reality around him. The air thickened with tension. "Your true mother," the woman declared, eyes glinting with a wickedness that sent a shiver down Jamie's spine. "What?" Jamie gasped, confusion crashing over him in waves. The world spun, reality shifting like sand. Richard's face paled, shock registering like a hurricane in his features. "No, this can't be." Richard stumbled back as if struck. "She's lying." "Am I?" the woman hissed, advancing closer. "I'm the one who protected you, not her. I made sacrifices. I gave my life to ensure you would be safe from the very truth she didn't want you to know." Jamie felt his chest tighten, disbelief warping into a painful knot in his throat. His heart raced, torn between truth and confusion. "Protecting me? By lying?" "Lies are easier to swallow than reality, dear," the woman replied, a smirk creeping onto her lips. "You've only touched the surface of what is at stake." His mother, the one he believed he lost, now stood before him, a myth brought to life. All the love he had clung to felt like drifting smoke. Before he could respond, a deafening crack shook the air. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Walls cracked with a sickening creak, and dust filled the room like a suffocating cloud. "Get down," someone shouted again, but it was too late. The ceiling shattered, raining debris like confetti. In the chaos, Richard's voice rose above the rest, desperate and shaky. "Run, Jamie, now!" But Jamie was rooted in place, eyes locked on the woman who claimed to be his true mother. No, he didn't want to believe her. Everything turned dark as the light flickered, pulling him deeper into a storm of confusion and pain. He had to decide. But in the chaos of crumbling walls and deceitful whispers, could he trust the pulse within him? And before he could make a move, lightning crashed outside, illuminating the night sky as if warning him of the impending truth. What had he always known? What had he always been? And now he had to face the ultimate question: who am I really? Jamie felt trapped. The woman claiming to be his true mother stood before him, her every word heavy with implications. "I am the one who protected you," she had said, and yet the weight of mistrust hung like a storm cloud. Richard's fear mirrored his own, carving deep lines into his face. But just as Jamie's resolve began to twist, the ground trembled again. It felt like the world was splitting apart. A deafening crash resounded. Debris fell like rain. But within that chaos, something glimmered. A flash, a flicker of light off a metal object. No, not metal. A key. A large, intricate key, landing among the rubble. The sight stunned Jamie, his heart racing. A key? To what? And how was it here? "Look!" he shouted, pointing. The intensity of the moment sharpened. Richard and the woman paused, eyes locked on the object, as anticipation crackled in the air. Suddenly, as if the sound of his voice had ignited something, the key began to glow. A warm, inviting light illuminated the room, casting shadows that danced like flames around them. Jamie's breath caught in his throat, pulse pounding. "What is that?" he whispered, fear bubbling beneath the surface. But before anyone could answer, the roof above trembled violently, and the flickering light expanded. It wrapped around Jamie like an embrace, drawing him toward the glowing key. His mother began to speak, but the words were lost in the roar of confusion around them. "You must," she tried to say, but a shockwave pulsed outward, throwing everyone back. Richard stumbled. The wild-eyed man fell to the floor, his face contorted with panic. "We have to leave. Now." But Jamie felt rooted. The warmth from the key pulsed through him, resonating with something deep inside. "No, I can't leave." As if answering his determination, the key shimmered again. This time it wasn't just light, it was like a wave, washing over everyone, enveloping them in a sense of calm amid the chaos. Jamie closed his eyes, heart racing, desperate to understand. But then came the twist. Dark shadows loomed at the edges of the room, curling and twisting with intensity. The woman stepped back, eyes wide, her expression shifting from confidence to horror. "No, this isn't how it's supposed to go." "What?" Jamie shouted, fear knotting his stomach. "What do you mean?" And in the midst of the unfolding chaos, the walls began to shimmer and warp. Richard's expression changed to one of realization, mixed with a deep-seated dread. He turned to the woman, his voice breaking. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Before she could respond, the shadows broke free, swirling toward Jamie, pulling him closer to the eldritch light of the key. "I had no choice," she screamed, voice cracking. "I did this for you. Jamie, you're the only one who can stop it." "Stop what?" Jamie cried, the room tilting beneath him. The key floated closer, hovering just above his outstretched fingertips, the eerie glow enveloping him entirely. And then, just as Jamie grasped the key, the shadows lunged forward, revealing their true form, phantoms of people he thought he knew, lost faces twisted with betrayal and rage. His mother screamed in horror, eyes wide as she pointed. "They're here! They've come for you!" "Run!" Richard shouted, eyes blazing with panicked determination. "Don't let them take you." But it was too late. The shadows, alive and relentless, surged toward Jamie, the key pulsing wildly in his grasp. He could feel the power thrumming within him. intoxicating and terrifying all at once. Suddenly, everything went black. The world fell silent, and Jamie stood alone in a vast void, the key still warm in his hand. He looked around, heart racing. What just happened? The void echoed his voice back at him, but there was no answer. Jamie, can you hear me? It was Richard's voice, muffled and fading. He strained to see, desperate to reach out, to pull himself back into the chaos. But the power in his hand hummed, pulling him deeper into the silence. The shadows were gone. Everything he believed shifted like sand beneath his feet. He had unlocked something, tapped into a force bigger than he could fathom. But at what cost? He was alone, carrying a weight he didn't fully understand. The choice loomed before him. What lay ahead? Would he face the truth, or would he look away? There, in that empty space, Jamie felt the key tighten its grip around his fate. And the real journey was just beginning. The light flickered violently around Jamie, a warm glow emanating from the key in his hand. He could feel its pulse, a rhythm that synced with his own frantic heartbeat. He was lost in a void, and everything he thought he knew slipped further from his grasp. The darkness cocooned him, yet he felt more alive than he ever had. But then came a feeling, a shivering sensation crawling up his spine. A shadow moved in the emptiness, swirling like smoke. Panic gripped him. What is this? He thought, heart racing. Suddenly, the void erupted into a burst of blinding light. Jamie shielded his eyes with his other hand, his pulse thundering in his ears. And then, as quickly as it came, the light dimmed, revealing a scene that stole his breath. He was back in the restaurant, but everything had changed. The room was empty, desolate, shadows clinging to the corners like lost souls. The chaos of moments before faded, replaced by an eerie silence that felt heavy, almost suffocating. Where was Richard? Where was his mother? Jamie took a step forward, confusion tightening its grip on him. He hesitated as a thought pricked at him. Had the key pulled him away? Or was this a trick? And then he heard it, a faint whisper echoing in the silence. Help me. The voice sent icy tendrils along his spine. It was soft, pleading. He turned toward the sound, heart pounding with both fear and hope. Is someone there? He called, trying to sound brave, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Please. The voice came again, but this time it felt closer. Jamie moved toward it, the shadows flickering like broken glass. The air around him shimmered with tension as he followed the sound into an obscured alcove. And then he saw her, a figure crumpled against the wall. Her hair fell in tangled strands around her face, and her eyes were filled with a mixture of terror and desperation. Get away from him, she screamed, voice poised between a plea and a warning. Mom, Jamie's voice cracked. It was his mother, the one he had yearned for. Yet this woman felt different. This mother was wild, frantic. What's wrong, I thought. No time to explain, she interrupted, uplifting her hand. Like a shield. They're coming for you. You need to. Suddenly the ground shook again, pulsating with energy. A splintering sound echoed through the space as the shadows began to swirl, their forms taking shape. Jamie's heart stopped. They were back, the men in suits, menacing and cold, emerging from the darkness like they had always belonged there. No, Jamie shouted, panic swirling. Not again. Yet within that chaos, a twist unfurled. As the men approached, their faces shifted, slowly morphing into reflections of Jamie himself. Eyes wide, expressions darkened, each man mirroring his fear, his confusion. What is happening? Jamie stammered, shaken, almost stepping back. Why do they look like me? It's not them, Jamie. They are you. His mother screamed, desperation. Bleeding through her words. You're being hunted for a reason, something that gives them power. You're tied. Before she could finish, the shadows lunged forward. They swarmed Jamie, enveloping him in darkness. No, he shrieked, but it was too late. The shadows burst around him, reshaping, distorting reality. Jamie, Richard's voice sliced through the chaos, somehow echoing even in this darkness. Jamie felt the energy shift, felt it crackle around him. Panic surged. Would he lose everything again? And then, a sudden revelation crackled in the air. The shadows pulled closer until Jamie could hear their whispers weaving through his thoughts. "You're the key to everything." "What?" Jamie gasped, panic rebounding in his chest. "What do you mean?" But before he could grasp that truth, the world twisted again. The ground tore open and he was thrust forward, into a future he wouldn't see coming. And then he understood. In that terrifying moment, Jamie discovered that he wasn't just a victim of their game. He was a player, wrapped in deceit and darkness, bound by an intricate web of lies. All at once, Jamie realized what they wanted: power, control, and he was the heart of it all. Fear ballooned in his chest as he faced his mirror images, panic gripping his heart. "No, this isn't what I want." As they closed in, he remembered the key in his hand, and in a moment of wild clarity, one question surged through his mind. What if the very key he held in his grasp was the weapon, not against them, but against himself? And in that nail-biting moment, silence plunged deep into the chaos. The reality shifted, landscapes bending. Would he release the power or surrender? Jamie stood frozen, caught between choices and shadows, the storm of uncertainty preparing to shatter everything he thought he knew. Jamie stood in the hollowed remnants of the restaurant, shadows swirling like dark whispers around him. The confrontation had turned into a nightmare, but as he clutched the glowing key, a wave of purpose surged through him. These shadowy reflections of himself, each a ghost of his fears and becoming, "I'm not afraid anymore." The shadows recoiled, the darkness shrinking back as Jamie's energy pulsed stronger. He sensed the weight of their intentions, the suffocating pressure they unleashed: fear, doubt, pain. But he also felt the warmth of hope reaching out from the key, illuminating the truth inside him. "Leave me," Jamie shouted, a fierce light blaring from the key in his hand. The blinding glow pushed the shadows into retreat, their forms twisting, losing their solidity. "You are not my destiny." The echoes of his voice bounced around the empty space, every word a weapon against the darkness that threatened to swallow him whole. With each pulse of light, Jamie became clear, the swirling doubt inside him dissipating. "You aren't who I am." "No!" The phantom of his mother shrieked, her voice breaking through the veil of darkness. "Jamie, don't! This isn't how it ends." But he didn't look back. He felt the ties binding him to sorrow break, a freedom blooming in his heart. "I choose my path." He thrust the key forward, forming a protective barrier that illuminated the alcove. The shadows hissed and swirled, desperately clawing at the light, but failing to breach its warmth. Outside, the chaos escalated, sirens blared, and voices shouted in confusion. But there in that moment, it felt like time stood still. Jamie inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with every ounce of courage he had. He could feel Richard's presence, a steady force beside him. "Together," Jamie said quietly, meeting Richard's eyes. It was a silent bond forged in the eye of the storm. In a sudden rush, Richard surged forward, grabbing Jamie's shoulder tightly. "You've unlocked something powerful. Don't let go." The tremor in Richard's voice revealed the fear that lingered beneath his bravado. "Jamie," his mother's voice trembled, but now it came tinged with a gentleness. "If you can harness this power, you can end everything that threatens you. You can protect everyone, but believe in yourself." Her shadow flickered, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability, a hint of the love he had similarly felt as a child. And in that revelation, Jamie found the key to not only escape, but to transform the pain into strength. With one final push, he imagined all that love and hope he had for the world pouring into the key, a sharp radiance enveloping him and Richard, pushing the shadows further away. "Protect us," he shouted, and a pulse of light exploded outward. The shadows screeched, swirling into nothingness, and just like that, they vanished. The nightmare faded, leaving behind a gentle hush of peace. As the silence settled, Jamie looked around the remnants of what once was. Richard stood beside him, eyes wide with disbelief, and for a moment they both turned to the spot where his mother had stood. But she was gone, a memory etched in their hearts. "We did it," Richard breathed, disbelief coloring his words. "You did it." Tears brimmed in Jamie's eyes, a mixture of loss and
gratitude swelling inside him. She's free now, and so am I.
a weight lifted, but a bittersweet ache remained. Jamie turned to Richard, who smiled gently, understanding the depth of their shared journey. As they stepped out into the raining streets, everything felt different. The city hummed anew with possibility. Joy and heartache would forever intertwine, but so would resilience and hope. "Let's get you something to eat," Richard said with a chuckle, placing a hand on Jamie's shoulder. "How about we start with dessert?" For the first time in what felt like ages, Jamie smiled wide, the corners of his mouth pulling upwards. This was not the end. It was a brand new beginning. "I'm in." As they walked into the bustling streets, Jamie knew. The chapters of his life were unwritten, filled with untapped potential and dreams yet to unfold. But a sense of urgency thrummed within him. If only the world knew how close they had come to darkness, and how every soul held the key to their own liberation. And now's the moment. You have to subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button right now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comment section with your thoughts and theories about the ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends. Don't wait even one more second to share this. Your support matters more than you can imagine.